Well, the conformation is the structure of the horse, the build of the horse. It's like people; they're all built differently. No, I've got one arm longer than the other. It's true. I go around in circles all the time.
What were you rowing?
I think that's the Paralympics. It's true, honestly. Okay, so this week, today, we're just going to talk briefly about purchasing your first horse if you've never bought one before for competition, specifically show jumping, obviously. So just a few guidelines. In a minute, we're going to talk about conformation, a few things you should look for. We'll get a couple of our horses out so you can see what you should look for and what to avoid, and then just really a few brief things. I think you should always make sure that you get something that's the right size, not too big, not too small. Obviously that depends on how tall you are. If you're 6'2", you look a bit of an idiot on a 14'2". So therefore, just getting the right size, making sure you're not overhorsed as well. Because some horses, have got a lot of character, a lot of experience, and they might not be for you. So I'd always recommend taking somebody with you to try one, somebody that knows what they're talking about, somebody that's probably been in the job for a long time, professional or whatever, because they'll know straight away what's right for you and what's not, just within the first few minutes. So that's certainly something to look for. And obviously, depending on what you want, if it's your first one, ideally you want something with a little bit of age. So you probably want something not too old but not too young. So you want something with experience, but you don't want something which is too old. What you've got to remember as well with horses, that when they get a little bit older, depending on who they've been with, they could have had a life full of great experiences, which makes them confident, it makes them brave, and it makes them competitive. But if they've been with a bad rider, that horse has had a lot of bad experiences for a very long time. I hear a lot of talk about not buying off of professionals because they're difficult to follow and amateur people can't follow them, so they're better to buy off of amateur people. Well, I can tell you right now that's bollocks. So, and I'll tell you for why. And I'm quite passionate about this. Professionals, when they ride their show jumpers, whether they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever, they put them on the spot to jump that fence in the correct place every single time, and that makes those horses unbelievably brave and unbelievably confident, and they make them feel that they can do anything. So if somebody gets on those horses who's not so good, who isn't quite so accurate with their striding because they're an amateur or a weekend rider or something like that, those horses can cope with those mistakes a lot more because they're super confident. Now gradually over time that confidence will be chipped away at if they keep making mistakes. So then you put a professional on them once a week, once every 2 weeks, 2 or 3 times, to give them a jump to get their confidence back up again. And if you work together with your trainer or with a professional, then there's no problems. Where it goes wrong is where people will buy them from a professional and then say, yeah, I'm going to have my regular lessons, yes, I'm going to let them ride them, and they don't. And then they wait for it to go wrong and then go back and say, look, it's stopping 4 months later. Well, if they kept up with the lessons and they kept up with the professional riding it in between, they'd have kept it on a level and it would have been absolutely fine. So that is probably my biggest bit of advice. If you buy from an amateur person, which has already made loads of mistakes, that horse's confidence isn't going to be that high. So therefore, to me, it makes no sense to buy a horse like that from an amateur, unless it has a good record, unless there's no problems, that's different. But for me, you're better off to buy from a professional, or at least when you go and buy it, go to view it, you take a professional with you and you get them to see that it's right. And if you have to give them commission or anything like that to do it, it's money well spent, because they'll make sure that you're looked after. So that would be my biggest piece of advice actually about buying a horse. If you go blind and you go on your own and you don't have that much knowledge or experience, it's kind of asking for trouble.
So, as an amateur rider, what sort of competition level are you going to enter, and what sort of horse?
Well,
are
it
you
really
gonna need
depends
at
on the amateur level. I mean, I know amateurs that jump a metre 50.
Okay.
You know, amateur just means that they don't do it for a living.
Yeah.
You know, so it depends. You can have amateur riders that are jumping 70 centimetres. You can have amateur riders that are jumping metre 50.
Yeah.
So the kind of people, I suppose, that I'm talking about now, you know, are people that are maybe eventing, show jumping. They're jumping 70 centimetres, but they're on ponies or horses, up to metre 20, metre 30. Okay. So once you've, you know, hopefully you've found one and you're happy with it, always get them vetted. You know, never, if they say even if you can have a better deal for cash or whatever, and if you don't have it vetted, always get them vetted. To be honest with you, even if I'm selling a horse, vetting protects me as much as it protects the person that's buying it, because if you don't have them vetted, you know, you haven't got a leg to stand on. It's as simple as that. Always have them vetted. With a standard vetting, there's always a blood test. The blood test is always looking for things like, painkillers or sedation, things that have been used when the horses or pony has been showed. So if you can, you want to try and get those horses vetted or blood tested within 3 days of the vetting or the horse being tried, if you can. And the reason why I say that is because most painkillers and most sedation are in the system for 3 days and then they're gone. So you have a 3 day window. That said, it's very, very difficult to get a vet to vet a horse within 3 days of trying it, because they're so busy. Normally it's a week or 10 days. So, but if you can, it's a good thing to do. Now, just going back to the vetting that we're talking about now. Get yourself a good horse vet. A lot of people use standard vets practices, dog and cat vets, I call them, that also do horses and cattle and everything else. Don't waste your time with them. Get a good sports horse vet, show jumping vet, eventing, whatever. You know, I can tell. I mean, I'm in Northamptonshire, but there's Toaster. I use Toaster and I use Oakham. They're both really good practices. They've got some really good horse vets, and they are, you know, that's what they do. It's exactly what they do every day of the week. They're betting. Sorry.
If the cost of that vet cuts into the price of the horse, it's well worth doing that.
Yeah, and you see, the thing is, to be honest with you, it costs as much to go to a vet like a dog and cat vet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's no different, really.
Okay, right.
So you might as well just use a really good vet.
Specialist person.
Yeah, completely. Because and also with a really good sports vet, they look at it slightly differently. They will look at a horse, and they will think about what the horse is going to do. So say, for example, they look at a horse. No horse is perfect, right? No horse is perfect. They've all got an issue here, an issue there, you know. And if they're older, they might have more issues because they've done more work. So, when a vet looks at those horses, a good vet will say, well, yeah, you know, it's done plenty of work. Its record stands up for itself. So it's had no lameness issues because there's no big blanks or breaks in its record. And they will say, look, you know, for what you're going to do, you're going to jump, I don't know, a metre 20 every Sunday. It's not the same as jumping a metre 50 Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday every week. So therefore the workload's not as big. So when you look at it like that, a good professional sports vet, they take all that into consideration.
Yeah.
They take into consideration what the person is buying it for.
Yeah.
They take into consideration what the horse has done already, and they fill in the gaps with the horse's record and all the rest of it.
And
a good, absolutely. So a good horse vet, a professional sports vet, will take that into consideration. There is no such thing as the perfect vetting. There'll always be something that isn't quite how it should be. Same as people, you know. But it's whether you can live with that. Whether it's
the vet will advise. I mean, if this is going to be a long-term problem, they'll obviously tell you. I mean, they'll say, look.
Yeah, I think the vets are in a very very difficult situation nowadays, because the trouble is, vets are scared to death of being sued by people for getting things wrong, and at the same time,
that's a good thing, isn't it?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, because the trouble is, people want to get their horses insured.
In terms of a buyer, it's a good thing, though, isn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, they're obviously going to get the best service possible if the vet is going to put his.
But then the vets. This is what I'm saying about there's no such thing as a perfect horse.
Right.
So there are a lot of the vets now. They're looking for the perfect horse.
Oh right,
because they're too difficult. They're too They're too worried to make a mistake.
Okay.
So if they see something which they think, well, actually, it's okay, but it could affect it in 4 years' time.
What's the official name for the document for the vet pass?
There's a 2-stage and there's a 5-stage vetting. To be honest, I'm not quite sure what a 2-stage is nowadays, because nobody really uses it, because insurance companies won't insure them with that. I believe, I could be wrong. So you have to have a 5-stage. If you have a 5-stage, it covers the whole clinical examination, and then you choose then whether you want X-rays or not.
Is that an extra cost then?
The X-rays are, yeah, an X-ray, yeah, they are. Depending on the practice, you're looking around about £1,000, you know, for
pound sterling.
Yeah,
right.
£1,000, yeah, for the clinical and X-rays. Around about, a bit more, a bit less, depending on the practice and who does it. Now, that's
the specialist vet. I mean, that's the same price as a normal vet as well. Like,
yeah,
right,
for sure.
okay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, some specialist vets might be a bit more. I mean, there's specialist vets like the team vet, and, you know, and things like that, and like you, some of your top German vets that get paid a fortune to go around the world vetting horses and the rest of it. I'm not suggesting you have to use people like that, but just specialist horse vets. There's plenty of them around, you know. So Neil Ashton at Oakham. I'm not just saying it, but Neil's a good vet, so I'm just saying that. Thanks, Neil. Yeah, so I think that you should. Yeah, you know, you have to have a 5-stage vetting. Whether you choose to have X-rays is up to you. If you're going to have them insured, you have to have X-rays. So, but that's the same. That's the thing with vettings, you know. With the X-rays, pretty rare nowadays that they're perfect. Pretty rare. So, but a good vet will look at you and look at the pictures, and they'll say, look, it's got this, it's got that, but it's got a good competition record. It's never been lame. I don't think it will affect it going forward, and they put the ball in your court. It's very rare that a vet will say, yeah, it's absolutely fine, because they won't do that.
Doesn't exist.
Yeah, they don't want to leave themselves wide open,
right.
So they won't do that. They'll put the ball in your court. I think horse dealers, as a rule, they get a bit of a bad rep. Everybody thinks horse dealers are dodgy people. Good horse dealers and reputable ones aren't, and unfortunately in this country there's not many left. There's more producers in this country now. On the continent there's thousands of horse dealers, and most of them are reputable and they're good people. You know, at the end of the day, pick a good one, do your homework. With social media nowadays, it's not difficult to do your homework. Do your homework, have a look at the websites. Not that means everything. So
you would just basically look at the horses they sold, their track record, what they won, what the competitions have been entered into, and just do the full.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Nowadays, you know, when you're selling horses,
it's all out in the open, isn't it? There's no hiding behind it.
Complete transparency.
Yeah.
Complete transparency, because
that's great.
Yes, it is, and no, it isn't. To be honest, but I know why you're laughing. But no, the reason why I say that, because this is another thing, and I think this is a good point actually. So, the way that the BS, British Showjumping, and the way that British Eventing do their records, actually, I'll rephrase that. I don't know how British Eventing do it now, but I know how they used to do it. And British Showjumping went that way. So their records, they show every single thing that they've done, right or wrong. So, for example,
in terms of events.
Yeah, so a horse goes in the ring, it will say it knocked number 3 down.
Oh, okay.
It was an oxer.
Oh, right, okay. It's all open
or
data.
It stopped at number 4. It was a vertical.
Yeah.
What it doesn't say is why the horse stopped. It could have been the rider.
Sure.
So some horses can have an iffy record because of the pilot that was on the horse at the time, which is nothing to do with the reflection of the horse. So it's great that we can have transparency and we can see the records. It's great, but I've personally missed out on buying horses because the records weren't great. But I knew that it wasn't the horse's fault. But I've got to sell that to somebody else. So if I do that, then. But
there is a sort of grey area in between where you look at the vet's report.
Yeah.
You try the horse out.
Listen, all I'm saying is that when you look at the horse's record, just look at it. It's in black and white, but it's not always what it seems. So if that horse has been with a professional and the record isn't great,
sure.
Don't touch it.
Okay. Yeah.
But if that horse has been with an amateur person, and they've made mistakes as well, and you know when you watch them ride whether they make mistakes,
Yeah.
then you have to read that into it, because a lot of people miss a lot of horses
Yeah.
because of that. You know, if it's a professional on a horse and the record's bad, don't touch it.
Yeah.
But if it's an amateur, then you've just got to read between the lines. But going back to what I said before, if you've got somebody that's looking after you, even if you're paying them whatever they ask, it's money well spent.
Yeah.
It's money well spent, because they will look after you. Because I'll be honest with you, if I wasn't a horsey and I didn't know anything about the job, it's a minefield. It's a minefield. But there is a lot of transparency, but there's almost too much, because you can read things into it. So get somebody with you that knows what they're doing, and yeah, go from there. Okay, so in a minute we're going to look at the couple of horses for the confirmation, just to give you a bit of a rough idea, roughly what to look for, movement, that kind of thing. One of them's my old faithful mare now. She's 11, Dorina. Had her since she was 5. A Grand Prix horse. She's won all over Europe. She's
I've seen it before.
she's a great mare. Yeah. The other one, the other one's a 6-year-old. She's just been sent to me from Kim Barsley. She's probably one of the biggest. There's not many dealers left like Kim in England. To be fair, Kim that owns Todd. She's a big dealer. A lot of horses go through her hands, and a great producer. She's got Emma Jo Slater that rides for her, and between them they produce a lot of very, very good horses. Billy Toomey's had 2 or 3 top ones. So Todd's come to us from Kim. She's a great person to buy horses from. She's done me a lot of good over the years. So quite excited about Todd. She bred Todd. She was out, to be honest with you, I can't remember his father. She's told me, but I can't remember. But he's out of a mare that Emma Jo rode, Utah. Emma won loads. I mean, Emma would come in the ring on that, and you'd like, well, that's it, we're done. It was a speed horse, and it won a lot. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he is. So that's all good.
Let's take a look.
Yeah, cool. I think it's quite important to stress that confirmation isn't everything. There are lots of really good horses that have really poor confirmation, but there are obviously some things that you try to avoid and stuff like that. So we've got an example here. The 6-year-old, his name's Todd. He's owned by Kim Barsley. He's competing up to kind of Foxton to 130 level. He's won quite a lot already for his age. They bred him. He's a really, really nice horse. His confirmation is pretty good, really. He's got a good, strong confirmation. It's kind of an old, you'll hear people say, there's an old-fashioned thing where they say it's like a leg in each corner kind of a type. What that means is they're quite strong in their build, which usually means they're quite sound. This horse actually has a fantastic trot, so he has a very good movement. So if you'd like to have a look round him with me, Razor. So when we're looking at them, really we're just looking to make sure that the front feet are a pair, the one's not smaller than the other, and they're not pin-toed so they don't stand in. You're also looking to check that they're not too close, standing too close together in front, which they're not. Always looking for, make sure that the tendons and stuff, there's no swellings or anything down here. I mean, your vet will check all these things anyway when you have them vetted. Ideally you want them with a good uphill kind of a frame, which he is, so it'd be very uphill. Again, it doesn't really matter if they are a little bit downhill, it's not the end of the world. I've got 1 or 2 that are at the minute, but come on Todd, you're not really helping, come on. So it's not the end of the world if they are a little bit downhill. But he's not. He's very uphill, very good strong set of shoulders. He'd be about 17 hands. He's a big lad. Like I say, strong type. Then you look to see that they're not cow hocked or turning at the back, which he's not. Everything's good there. Also, I mean, like I say, your vet does all this kind of thing, but you look under here to check there's no warts or sarcoids, things like that. But like I say, your vet does all that. So Actually, would you like to add anything to that, Hannah, my glamorous assistant?
No, I think you've covered it all.
You think I've covered it? Yeah, I mean, he's a good, strong type. Kim bred him, and she'd be really proud that she bred him because he's a really good type. And you'd look at him for his conformation, and touch wood anyway, you would say that you wouldn't really like to think there'd be many problems with him with soundness issues because he's just a good, strong type. Some horses you can look at, and they can be, it's quite difficult to explain, but they can be, conformation can't be very good, and it can cause problems because of that when you start putting a lot of pressure on them for training and the workload. But with him, no, he's good.
Is his conformation what structure and sort of build and?
Yeah, so your conformation is how they're put together.
Okay.
So how they're put together, and some horses are put together in a very bad way, but that said, can still have a very sound career. But then there can be other horses that are put together in a bad way as well, and they can be riddled with lameness for the rest of their lives because of it when they're put under pressure. Same as people, So yeah, you try to look to make sure the conformation is good, but it isn't the be all or end all.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, if you just want to follow me,
lad, isn't he?
yeah, it's a very, very good looking boy. If you follow me around the front. Two good front feet there as a pair, so if you look at some horses, they can be pin-toed, pigeon-toed, some people call it, where they're standing together like that.
Right.
He doesn't. They're both nice and level, they're both the same shape. Sometimes you might have one which is upright and one which is flat. All these things you try and avoid because it can put extra pressure on the tendons and things like that when they start jumping.
Okay.
So then, it results in lameness.
Yeah.
That said, not always. I've had plenty of horses that have had not great conformation on the front feet, and it's never been a problem. So, but as a resale, if you're thinking of reselling, it's probably not good to have it because a lot of vets don't like it because they're frightened to death of being sued if something goes wrong. So a lot of vets will run away from it nowadays. They wouldn't have done years ago, but they do now because they don't want to be sued. So it's something to avoid, but like I say, his conformation's good. Hannah, you want me to just run him up for us, would you?
Yeah.
Just trot him up, is that okay?
Yeah.
Just get him down, just take him down there and trot towards us. Yeah. We'll just trot him up just so you can see him trot up.
Okay. Do we want a side view or
coming towards us, and then as he goes past us.
Right, okay.
When you look at horses, it's a good thing to do just to see how they move.
Nice.
Good, that's better, good. Okay, so he has a good trot, as you can see, he's really sound. I know there'll be loads of people that will watch this and say, well, he's bound to be sound, it's on the surface, blah, blah, blah. But, he's got a good trot. He's a very sound horse, good conformation. He's a good, like I say, he's a good example of something that you would look for. But that said, not every horse looks like him, so. But yeah, that would be the ideal. So, okay, so this is Dorina. She's a 11-year-old. Just turn around a bit, Hannah. She's a 11-year-old mare. She's my main one at the minute. I've had her since she was 5 coming 6. She's won everywhere really. You'd have seen her before if you watch the channel, but she's won at the year show. She's won in Germany, Belgium, France, Spain. She's won everywhere. Great Yorkshire. She's won all over the country. 140s. 145 up to 150 and including 150 she's won a lot, so different conformation to the last one, but still good, still quite strong, different type, more of a blood type than the last one. Actually struggled to keep weight on her, she frets a little bit, so she always looks a little bit fitter than some of the others because of that, I suppose. But again, she's got good conformation. Front feet are very good, they're both a pair, they're level, and again she's very uphill and she has a great trot, very sound mare. So yeah, so we just run her up then,
yeah.
Hannah, please. Okay.
Sorry, mate. It's my fault. Sorry.
Razor.
Sorry.
Go to the first one.
Good imagine. You're right, sorry.
Steady.
Lovely.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Hannah. Bit fresh. She's actually had a week off. So she's been a bit fresh. Cool.
Beautiful.
That's good enough. Put her away. Thank you. Thanks, Hannah.